one united. Come on, don't fight it. You heard it here first, now run and tell of the righteous riot.
This is me with Rick and Miles. How about that?
On the Run and Tell show.
He said, how about that?
All right, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Run and Tell. And we have a special guest with us, Simon Woodstock.
So it's probably just like a problem that I have or a hang up. Like when it comes to testimonies and like the linear thing, you know, like, so when were you born? When were you born again?
Yeah.
I'm like, so God gave me something, man. I fixed it.
Okay.
So here's what we'll do.
All right.
Got the hat.
Here's what we'll do. So I got the hat.
Okay, bro, you're introducing another strange thing. We haven't even addressed the fact that you're dressed like
you're in
a
a
purple
gorilla,
monkey.
Purple
Because-
gorilla suit.
What time is purple? A great
There are
apologetics
gorilla
resource.
fingers in the way.
Free of charge.
There you go.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, see, I'm breaking the fourth wall right now, huh?
No, this is
Free
good.
of charge. Okay, yeah, you can get these from Way of the Master or maybe even What Time is Purple Direct. Free PDF download, a great apologetics resource. So yeah, What Time is Purple?
Okay.
We're going to talk. What time is purple? It's like right now.
Yeah.
In the suit.
So,
So here.
okay.
Well, I don't know. I guess we'll see, we should do it this way because there's like a lot of questions and a lot of things we could cover.
Okay.
So what I did was, because I just have this like, and it's my own problem. It's not your guys' problem. My own problem is like to do the whole like linear testimony thing. Like I'll just fall asleep in the middle of it. So
Okay.
so what I did was I've been a Christian for 20 years.
Okay.
So I wrote down every year, like on a piece of paper, like 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, all the way up until now, and even next year. And then I wrote the previous decades, 90, 80, 70, and even the 60s. So to avoid being like linear, you guys pick, and then I'll just tell you like God stories from
Okay,
whatever
cool.
year
I'm down.
or decade.
This is interesting.
I just want to hold the. Can I hold it and then you pick it?
Let me get it first.
Yeah, so
Show it to the
it's actually-
camera,
It's
'cause I
actually,
don't-
it's really heavy.
You wear this on your head, bro?
yeah, when I'm not wearing my purple
So why are you
gorilla mask.
wearing that?
Well, pick, and if
Okay.
it comes out in one of the years or in one of the
Okay.
decades, then we'll talk about it.
All right.
If not, then it's just like we.
It-
don't
How
get
many
to-
do one
cards
of these
is it?
cards have the significance to this?
Here,
You
let me
gotta
hold
pick
it.
a year.
and
If you
pick
pick the
it.
right year
right.
that I
Okay,
made
no,
the
no,
hat, then-
you go ahead. You pick. I'll
Yeah.
pick. You pick. I pick.
yeah, there you go. Okay,
All right.
so
Did
Okay,
you
I'll
mix
pick
these
first.
up? All right, you pick first.
and I haven't thought much about the years. I just got the years together. And
When did you do this?
do the years?
This little flashcard stuff.
This morning, because I got this idea yesterday.
Cool. All right, I like
This is
that.
interesting. Okay.
What year did you get?
2010.
2010. Okay, 2010. So to me, a testimony is just like what God did
course.
or is doing, like at any time. It's not necessarily this
Okay.
whole thing.
Yeah.
So 2010 was an interesting year for me. I had taken a break from seminary before that because I just had some personal issues, emotional type of problems in the mid-teens, and so I was sort of on a break. And then 2010 does stick out to me because Dr. Norman Geisler, who I had already studied under for years, was with Veritas Seminary at the time. They were just getting started out. So Veritas started in 2009. 2010 was like their next ramp it up kind of year. And Dr. Geisler hosted a trip to Israel. And I had been out of seminary for maybe like 2 or 3 years. And I was kind of bummed because I really liked being in seminary. And that motivated me to get back into seminary in 2010. So I went on this really cool Israel trip with Dr. Geisler. And I was having kind of a crisis of faith. And it was just awesome, like going to Israel, you know, and I needed that kind of like intensity insofar as earthly spiritual representation was concerned. So I'm going to these holy sites, and it was getting through to me. I'm like, hey, wait a minute, you know, I can't be numb to the fact that that's where Jesus probably walked right there, you know, and so it was really good. And then just getting to know Dr. Geisler a little better. Right, you're on a trip. There was maybe like 30 people on the trip tops, so we're in the same bus, staying at the same hotels, and just I already knew him pretty good, but it was a good way to get to know him. So that 2010 was a good transition year for me.
So what was the crisis of faith
Yeah,
that
that
you were
confuses
having?
me because like you go to seminary, you think that you'd be growing.
Oh, but they
closer.
call seminary cemeteries sometimes.
It
so-
can be. It can
Okay.
be.
Yeah.
It can be. So, in brief summarization, really what I was going through was because I was pretty heavy into substance abuse and addiction previously. Even though I was sober, I was kind of like a dry drunk, like they might say in recovery ministry. Like I was not using, but I hadn't sort of dealt with the damage that I had done to my brain and my spiritual life and my emotions. So even though I was a believer, I was having like some emotional problems. So I was at seminary. And the seminary was fine. It was actually helping me out. I was learning how to research, and I was doing some research on psychology and stuff on the side that was actually pretty helpful. And I had gotten some counseling out there. But yeah, it can just kind of happen anywhere. Like if you're having some emotional problems or some things that you haven't dealt with in your previous life or whatever, they can catch up. You can be, the president of a seminary,
Yeah.
and it can catch up with you. So it just kind of caught up with me at seminary in the mid 2000s. I took a break. It essentially dropped out. It was kind of a bummer. But then 2010 was when I was able to get back in, and that Israel trip really just put it back on point.
When you're there, you're just seeing it's irrefutable when you're there.
You're at the places.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, I remember being on the Mount of Beatitudes, and I was like, "Oh snap! This
All right,
is where
you're
that."
bragging. You're
all right,
bragging.
my bad.
Pull the
I
card.
thought you went. You didn't go?
I pulled the card. It's 2010.
No, I thought
so
you
what
went
are-
to Israel. You didn't go to Israel?
No, I didn't go. That's why I'm telling you. Stop
2001.
2001. Okay, I was at Calvary Chapel Bible College when 9/11 happened.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm getting so old now. I'm almost 50 years old. So a lot of people might have been young then, but I was 31,
Okay.
and I was kind of in leadership at Calvary Chapel Bible College in Marietta. So on campus, right, the Bible bubble. Pre-internet, really, like there wasn't people like having cell phones or texting or anything. Not this up to the minute information. You had to watch the news or
Definitely not social media.
Yeah,
at the
not
time.
yet.
Yeah.
Maybe Friendster was probably just kind of getting its wheels
AIM.
greased.
It was
Yeah, yeah, something. Yeah, right. America Online. Or something.
Yeah.
So I'm on this campus with 300 just people hungry for the Lord, and we just start hearing bits and pieces of news one morning that kind of misinformation at first, but then it was clear. They made an announcement to the whole school. Yeah, these two planes drove. Oh man, I'm having some technical difficulties. These two planes flew into the Twin Towers and all this. So yeah, that was really intense. So that's where that 2001 that stands out as that being that year, September 11th of that year, and I was at Bible college. Yeah, and that was my first year really as a Christian, practicing Christian.
So what did you guys do though in response to what happened in 9/11?
Let's see. We kind of had an emergency assembly. I don't remember the day of the week, but I don't think it was Friday, because that's when we would have like our lectures where we would all get together. So I think they called like sort of an emergency assembly, and we got together, and Brad Lambert and Dave Shirley, one or the other or both, got up and just said, "Hey, this is what's going on." And then I think Dave might have done a little thing. Dave Shirley, he's still like the vice president of the school. He's been there for 20 years. He might have said, "Well, here, this is like the 5 pillars of Islam," and they just went for the 6th pillar of Islam. So he sort of broke it down to us,
Okay.
And then it was sort of like that generation's, where were you when John F. Kennedy got shot, right?
Yeah.
We were there at Bible college. And then you hear these stories. There was all that amazing stuff that went down. Brian Broderson happened to be in New York, or in the area, New Jersey, New York. Mike McIntosh figured out how to be the guy on the only plane that flew. He was a fire department chaplain or something.
Yeah.
And so they had a plane go up full of firemen. So he just jumped in there, right? Flashed his badge. So he gets there, and they're out doing evangelism. Lloyd Pulley was down there. Andy Dean has a testimony from there, which is, check that out. Andy Dean, his 9/11 testimony, it's pretty good. It's out there in the abyss of seemingly infinitesimal media that you can get there.
All right.
So that's 2001. All right.
All right, picking another one. 2008.
2008. Okay, so that's leading up to 2010. I think I might have just been like living at home, maybe going to some counseling, on an indefinite break from ministry, getting into some street evangelism, because I wanted to do something for the Lord, So I hooked up. It was around that time where I was doing a lot of street evangelism in Northern California, San Jose, California area, South Bay, with a group called the NorCal Seed Sowers. They're kind of an affiliate of Way of the Master.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so I wasn't doing much. I was kind of a shut-in. I wasn't really getting out, but I wanted to do something. Things weren't going too well as far as ministry in churches at that time. But I could get with these kind of wild and crazy guys and gals that were out street preaching and stuff, and handing out. I could stand and hand out tracts,
Right.
And as minimalist as that is, I go down to, so probably the winter of 2008, I was down at Christmas in the Park with a stack of tracts like this big, just going, Merry Christmas, trying to do something
What were you going to counseling for?
Again, same kind of stuff, like undealt with issues with regards to the 90s. So if you pull the 90s card.
So was it
Yeah.
counseling though through the church? You were counseling somewhere else?
No, thanks for asking. And I don't mind being open about this because a lot of people are going through a lot of things now. So I realized I needed some counseling probably like in 2005. So I started going to this guy, Lance Nelson. He's fantastic. It was actually Dr. Geisler's son-in-law. And he was working at a firm called Agape Christian Counseling in North Carolina. I think he has his own firm now, but he was working. So it was a counseling center, but he was full on like biblical counselor, confrontational, nouthetic. I know all the stuff in the aftermath of going through it. Then and learning about it so I can help other people now. Just confrontational, nouthetic, and I went to him for like 6 months and started to untangle sort of the knots that had been tied up. And so that was like 1 out of 3 counseling sessions that I went to. So during 2008, if I'm remembering correctly, I think I was going to this place called Advent Counseling, which is like a Christian-based counseling center. And I had really I had one really good counselor there. Brian was his first name. His last name will come to me like at some point. But he just, same kind of thing. Just talk therapy, talking things out.
What's a bad counselor?
What's that?
What's a bad counselor? Like, how do you know you got a good one?
When somebody says, "Stop doing that."
A bad counselor would be like Jim Carrey or something.
How does that make you feel?
No, you never seen that Mad TV episode where they have a counselor and the guy's counsel every time is just stop it.
Which is half the battle, right? Stop it and start something like good in replacement of what you're doing.
So someone who gives you no feedback just says, "Oh, you gotta do
No,
this."
it's a good question. A bad counselor would be somebody that says you just need to love yourself more, or the answer to all your problems is within you, or you just need to separate from your wife and go find yourself, right? Like, there's junk counseling out there. Even going through ministries that might be calling themselves like a Christian counseling center. So just bad stuff, anything like really self-focused. There's a lot of that, and self-esteem doctrine. There are some bad counselors even
in the Christian circle of Christian counseling, there can be some bad, right?
Yeah.
So where's a good place that you would recommend people get counseling from?
Yeah, locally.
Well, here's the thing is he's not local, but he's online, and he's actually my go-to guy. His name's Mike Jackson, and he does this thing called International Legacy. He started out as a Christian apologist, as a research, basically more than an assistant. He was Geisler's assistant. So he helped, if you look in the front matter of Systematic Theology, Volume 3, Sin and Salvation by Dr. Geisler, he thanks Mike Jackson. Mike Jackson really kind of copy edited that work. So we were at seminary together, and what Mike Jackson could have gone on to be a PhD theologian or whatever. He saw a need at seminary for discipleship. He saw people, even like myself, needing counseling for various reasons, not necessarily because of seminary, just at seminary. So he just felt led. After he graduated from Southern Evangelical Seminary, where Geisler was the president at the time on campus, he took a different career path, and he's sort of finishing up a PhD dissertation in apologetics as it relates to Christian counseling. And he's on to something because he says that's what apologetics is about, taking people from wrong beliefs to right beliefs. Well, that's what counseling's about too. You get all these wrong beliefs, right? And there's a mess of them, and then it's sorting it out and taking people to right beliefs.
Yeah, because that's a major aspect of apologetics is philosophy, worldview.
Yeah,
right?
and that's what I'm teaching actually a psychology class at Teen Challenge right now, and that's what we did. We did sort of the philosophy of anthropology and the soul's relation to the body and stuff like that. So that Mike Jackson's got expertise in this, and he's so you can actually access him online. And he'll do sort of a chat.
Is there some kind of where'd you get your curriculum for that class?
I just kind of assemble it from like a bunch of resources that I'm familiar with from doing my own research, So as much as it's kind of a common resource, gotquestions.org is fantastic.
Oh yeah,
I love that.
I use that all the time.
Yeah. And Compelling Truth, which is like another sort of subsidiary of that. Great stuff. And I just got to be honest, when I was doing a paper in seminary, doing my counseling stuff, I needed to do a critique on Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic model. And the article from gotquestions.org critiquing Freud's psychoanalytic model was just fantastic. I quoted it at length, you know. I footnoted it properly. You're allowed to do that. So yeah, I use it a lot. I'll use a site called Probe Ministries. I'll use some of Ken Ham's stuff, depending on what the topic is. I'll look for Geisler stuff. I'll use even stuff just kind of out of the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, because this is just a good overview on some of these in-depth things.
Yeah.
Or there's another website called the International Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
Yeah.
So we're doing in my philosophy class at Living Way, we're going to do philosophy of humor on Tuesday. So I'm kind of getting geared up maybe for that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just talking
You're
about
gonna
Now
teach a
it all
class
makes sense.
in that.
no, I don't know.
No.
Maybe depends on what. If it's the only thing clean, I'll wear this.
Do you iron it?
You can't iron fur.
Ironically, no, but we will be talking about irony in the class.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. 2000.
2000. Okay, that's the year I got saved. Yeah, I got
Y2K? Did Y2K scare you, bro?
saved for real.
No,
Let's
I'm
see.
joking.
I'm trying to think. So that was going on back then. Chuck Missler has passed away, so I can talk trash about him. Yeah, he was on his tour, right? His like motorhome tour, freaking everybody out about Y2K and how it was going to be a crazy thing, and he was selling people like survival kits, I think, or something like that. And so I was kind of going through my own thing. So I think I probably just listened to Prince. And partied like it was 1999, that New Year's Eve, or something. Maybe, I think I was already kind of sober and then just like really contemplating the faith. And then I got saved in January, February-ish of early 2000.
How does the gospel come in?
Let's see. So, long story short, throughout my life, people had really tried to reach out to me. I had an existential experience with God when I was like 7 years old, and then blew it off like a week later. And then my parents sent me to YMCA camp back when it was actually the Young Man's Christian Association. There were like youth ministers and stuff at this camp. And they were sharing the gospel, but I didn't understand. I knew something was going down. They were like leading people to faith, but I was like, this is weird. What are they talking about? And then, people, when I would drink and party and go down to the bars years later, would hand out tracts and stuff. Some evangelists would go down there, hand out tracts, reach out to me. I got sent to a denominational private school when I dropped out of high school. And there was a guy there that was kind of like an intern, had already graduated. He was like 19 or 20 years old, was reaching out to us, sharing the gospel and stuff, and people praying for me and stuff. So it all just kind of was this cumulative sort of thing. And then when I finally came to the end of myself, late 1999, going into early 2000, there wasn't a Bible in the room. I was living in this apartment in downtown San Jose, and I just sort of got this mail from God, like, choose who you're going to serve this day, right? And I'm looking at all these posters on my wall. So I had this little like goofy little kind of shrine-ish type of thing going on. Like I had a lava lamp and a foam like gargoyle, right? That looked like it was stone. It was like a Halloween decoration. So I had my lava lamp and my gargoyle, and then I had a poster, like an AC/DC poster of Bon Scott with like Angus Young on his shoulders, and it's just flames, and it's like a Highway to Hell like poster or something like that. So I'm looking at all this stuff, and God's like, okay, who are you serving? Like choose this day whom you're gonna serve. Essentially, no Bible, nobody there to lead me into prayer or anything. I just got down and repented finally, and prayed and just cried out to God, and did some version of like trusting in Christ for salvation, and then went to Calvary Chapel San Jose. I knew of that church. Don McClure and the McClure family had reached out to me since like 1992. So I knew of that church, which was a God thing. I could have easily just walked onto the campus of a Christian Science church or something. I didn't know the difference. Right. Excuse me.
So how did you know of that church again? Don McClure reached out to you?
They had this is like so funny. Like they had a skate church in like 1992.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Pastor Don let these like crazy guys build a skate ramp there, and they had this like ministry, right? And a bunch of us made like I made like a false profession of faith,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then I even got baptized. So I got baptized by Don McClure 8 years before I was saved. You know, like kind of a funny thing. And I spent the next 8 years just going buck crazy, you know. So I don't think it was a real conversion. But I appreciated Pastor Don and his family reaching out to me.
Because they were open to your group of people, right? Because you went there to skate.
Yeah, Pastor Don, even though he looks strictly business, he's just open to whatever, you know. Like he's more down to earth, I think, than people think, or would think. Yeah, there were several people that got baptized, but myself and this guy Sean Mandoli, who does a church in Hollywood, we're the only two that are like walking with the Lord, and that was even after I think Sean stuck with it. There was like this gap. This 8-year like wilderness wandering, like worse than that, like real bad time in my life. And so yeah, all that, you know, in sort of culmination, I was like, oh man, I just need to get over myself. I need to get out of this worldly behavior. And then so I repented, and then I moved into the dorms at Calvary Chapel, San Jose, and Pastor Don was still there. And he just met with me. He welcomed me in with open arms and set me up with a bunk over in the dorms there, and I started doing like groundskeeping, sweeping leaves and doing whatever, worked in the coffee. 2000, yeah, that was it.
Wow.
Yeah, and then so before we go on, this is kind of a funny story. So that's how I wound up going to Bible college. There's a Don. He styles himself as Don McClure Jr. now, but he was Donnie McClure back then. And he challenged me, like he's like, "I'll go to Bible college if you go to Bible college." And I was like, "Right, I'm a new believer, right?" I'm like, "Dude, what are you talking about, man? I'm already at Bible college. Like, I'm there, dude. This is me, like, going to get a ticket to Bible college, you know." And he winds up flaking out. He didn't go, but I was already like on board with it, so I wound up going to Bible college. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's cool. So you never went?
He never went.
Oh,
no.
man.
He should have went, but he never went.
That's something you would do, bro. If
What,
we were
flake
like,
out last minute?
Yeah.
Nah.
If we're like, hey, let's go to Bible college, I'd be over there by myself. All right.
You never went.
That's true. 2020.
2020. All right. So I'm working. My office is right next to Dave Zamora's.
Right.
At Living Way College. So I you talk about the front lines, man. Like sanctified black angels, Mexican mafia, gospel gangsters, dude. I am right there. My office is right next to his. And my calling there is to just be in full support, dude. Like he's always got an idea, right? Like, hey, we got to do this. First he calls on Lucy, right? Hey, Lucy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, he's going to call on me next. Simon, come here, you know, and it's that idea or that vision that he's got. And that's our job there, is to lift his hands up with these things. He's got a lot of things going on. He's got a lot of energy. And yeah, like, so it's a school of ministry. He has an open door policy. You hear 90% of what he's talking about. And what he'll be talking about, something he's got to sort out at Living Way, Fontana, is something similar that's going on because I pastor Living Way, Lytle Creek as well, a smaller church. And so they're talking about, you know, the bank account and how they're doing business as this, and there's some kind of communication thing with the bank. I'm like, man, I'm going through that right now. So I'm like making mental notes, like, okay, I'm not alone. This is a standard kind of church problem. And I'll glean like, okay, this is how they're dealing with it, and it helps. So I'm getting this like school of ministry just by being a soft target in a drive-by zone in downtown Fontana at Living Way, Fontana. Yeah.
Well, especially, I mean, if you're walking around like that,
Purple gorilla suit.
they're gonna think
Seems
you're
like
a giant bag of Kush.
Fun target, sir.
Well, hold on. So what about Living Way, Lytle Creek? Is there anything interesting going on there? What's the dynamic there? What's God doing there?
It's great. So it's a funny story. I'll try to summarize it. Well, let's see. So directly to your question, it's just its own. It's almost like a undeclared space. There's no mayor up there. There's no sheriff's department.
Yeah, rural.
There's a fire department. It's vacant. There's like 4 forestry people, and they're just totally overworked, right? And so you kind of just do your own thing up there, and it's awesome. The demographic is like Steve McQueen meets Johnny Cash.
Okay.
Yeah, just pretty rad, you know. And I mix it up with people up there. I do love it up there.
So you're not from there?
No, I was
As we've heard.
I was sent up there by Pastor Dave Zamora.
Okay.
And this is like a funny story. I'll try to give you the short version. I was working at Calvary Chapel Bible College in Marietta as a librarian and instructor for 5 years. And that season was coming to an end. And so I reached out to Pastor Dave. I was like, hey, you got anything? And he texts me back. He says, I think I do. And so long story short there, he's like, yeah, you can come work here, direct the Bible college. And then that'll kind of get you established so you can go pastor this church. And you kind of do split time, right? So I'm bivocational, but in vocational ministry.
Yeah.
And so I've just known Brian Broderson for a while, you know. He kind of knows about me or whatever. Like your friend that called, kind of the guy reaching out, knowing my past, my background, but he knows me in ministry as well.
Okay.
So Pastor Dave calls Brian and sort of runs it by him. He goes, yeah, we're thinking about sending Simon up to Lytle Creek. And Brian's like, well, he's not ordained, is he? I don't think he's ordained. No, he's not ordained, Dave says. He doesn't really have any senior pastor ministry experience at all, does he? And Dave's like, no. And Brian's like, so what's the thought process here? Brian asked Dave, he goes, what kind of people are up in Lytle Creek? Right? And Dave's like, oh, like tweakers and trippy people and people that live down by the creek in tents and stuff. So Broderson goes like this. He goes, Dave told me this story. He goes, oh, Simon's perfect. Just ordain him, like drive-by ordination, right? I just drove through Fontana, got ordained, and then went up there. And then, but legit though, legit. So the drive-by ordination, and then he's like, yeah, and just help Simon out with the senior pastor stuff. He'll figure it out as he goes along. But he's perfect. Sounds perfect. Yeah. And it has been a good fit. Like,
have you found that it's a lot of that though? A lot of drugs and
so
recluse people, or
I was doing yard work, like some volunteer yard work for this lady who lives right on the creek bed, kind of. So there's these trippy people coming in and out. You know, I'm like, hey, come to church, man. I'm gonna have like 30 pizzas like in a few weeks. You know. So some guy's talking to me. I was like, hey, what's your name? He's like, who wants to know?
Yeah.
Right? And I was like, oh, I forgot. Yeah. So they don't know if I'm some kind of narc or something.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, what's the year you met your wife?
So I'm married to Amina Bahati Woodstock. She's fearfully and wonderfully made. And so that would be if you had picked out of their 2015.
Oh snap! There it goes.
Oh wow! Just randomly got 15.
I went with Far Reaching Ministries to teach the Sudan People's Liberation Army Chaplaincy Corps an Introduction to Bible course in South Sudan. So if you think downtown Fontana is a bad neighborhood.
Yeah. What's that guy's name?
South Sudan. Wes Bentley.
Wes Bentley. You were with Wes Bentley, bro?
I went with his ministry. I didn't travel. Okay. I traveled with, I actually traveled with this guy.
Well, no, that's still the same thing, though, because that's his ministry's over there, right?
So I traveled with this guy. I traveled with this guy, Brett Theobald. And he'll never tell you any of this unless it comes out like in natural conversation. He's very humble.
Okay.
He is retired Special Forces trainer of Special Ops, U.S. Marines, has done counterterrorism training in like Yemen, Iraq, Afghanistan, right? But just the coolest trippy dude. He has 2 passports, I think. He was born from missionary parents in Papua New Guinea, but he's got American citizenship as well. Just this third culture guy, like totally trippy. And then, I just blew the top half of that guy's body off that one time. Like it starts kind of coming out in just casual conversation.
Yeah.
So I travel with him. I'm totally protected, right? And we get in planes, trains, automobiles, and we finally get into South Sudan. Yeah, you talk about a drive-by zone, bomb-by zone. Yeah. And in that, Mina Bahati at the time, now Bahati Woodstock, was working at the Far Reaching Ministries sort of guest house in Uganda, because you go through, you can't just fly into Sudan. It's just typically shut down, like no flying in, even if you have a small plane. So you go into Uganda and then drive over the border. So I met her and her friends. They were just having like this fun kind of get together when we were traveling through. Met her, saw her again on the way back. And when I was leaving, like we're all saying goodbye, and I wanted to go in for the hug, right? But I didn't want her to think I was like this creepy dude. So I'm like, I kind of maybe feint the hug, but then just go in for the handshake, right? And then I get in the cab with this guy, Eddie, and we're driving away. And I was like, oh man, I should have hugged that girl. But I didn't want her to think I was a creep. did I do the right thing? Man, I wanted to hug that girl, right? Just kind of thinking that, real, just no, kind of like, yeah, I like
You
this
should have
girl.
did what I did with my wife. I stepped on her shoe.
Yeah, knock her,
I gave her a flat tire.
knock her over on accident.
She was ticked. Go ahead. Sorry.
So fast forward, we're married. I just dropped her off in Yorba Linda before coming up here. We've been married now 3 years. We're fostering a child, hoping to adopt him. His name's Xavier.
How long ago did you meet her again?
So that would have been 2015.
2015.
Like August 2015. We were engaged by March 2016. We just had the epic sort of Skype, FaceTime.
How'd you get a hold of her on Skype after leaving without hugging?
Okay, so she needs to be here really because there's
Okay.
the stories are like parallel and then they go all over the place.
Okay.
So and so she'll need to come on the show, I guess, maybe and defend herself in some
Yeah.
area. So I get back.
Defend herself.
I had gotten some kind of like quasi malaria. I don't have malaria in my blood system.
Okay.
But I'm Googling, right? And I have like every symptom of malaria, right? And not like being a hypochondriac. I'm really sick. So that had started in Sudan. So I was sick when I was coming back through. So I had just gotten back on Facebook after having not been on there for a year or two. And there's this message. Hey, do you remember me? This is Amina. I'm just checking it. And according to her story, she was just checking.
Snap.
She was just checking on me to see if I was all right. You know? So,
Nah, I'm not joking. I'm joking.
so, I do the guy thing. I'm immediately looking at her profile, and I was like, this girl, hey, man, I'm not worthy, man. This girl is, like, cute. So we start chatting, and next thing you know, we're married, yeah. So.
Wow, praise the Lord, man.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Praise the
This
Lord.
is a good thing. He who finds a wife.
So you were wait, I'm confused, man. So you guys Skyped the whole time and got engaged like that, or were you going back and forth?
Let's see. So, again, to make a really relatively long story short, we were messaging via Facebook once a week, twice a week, once a day, twice a day, right? Good morning and
Yeah.
good night, because she's 10 hours ahead over there, right?
Yeah.
And when I realized, I was like thinking, oh, it's noon here, so it's 10 p.m. over there. I was like, oh, I think I'm on the hook here. And so at that time, I think we were starting to do maybe some FaceTime. No, not yet. We were still just really kind of messaging. And we wind up sorting it out that we like each other. And then so at that point, we figured out the Skype thing. And so we would have a Skype date every Saturday. And then I talked to Rod Thompson. So Rod Thompson was my pastor at that time.
Ah, Rod.
Yeah, we were at I was at Cross Culture Ministry, and then my wife and I were there.
With the Sabios?
Yeah. And I go to talk to Pastor Rod, and I was like, I think I'd be if I have the opportunity to marry this woman, I think I would be really stupid if I didn't. And he's like, that was like sort of the end of the counseling session. He's like, yeah, that's what it boils down to a lot of times. And then he gave me, so this was like our pre-marriage counseling. So anybody who does like this exhaustive pre-marriage counseling, like more power to you, but I don't want to bust your bubble. This was like sort of it.
Yeah.
Rod goes, just remember, if there's ever any like problem in the marriage, it's you. And I was like, okay. But he followed up on it. He's like, women have female characteristics. So don't get in your mind that you're going to sort of trade out and solve the problem, right? In some sinful mindset. He's just sort of playing that movie out, right? Mm-hmm. He's like, don't think that you're just going to solve it by getting with some other woman sometime because you're annoyed by female characteristics. No. You're getting with another woman that has female characteristics. It's the same boat. So as weird or atypical as that seems.
No, that's a very analytical approach to it, actually.
Yeah.
Because there's spiritual and then there's like reasonable, and I think that's more on the reason side that's what you're at odds with. I remember I was expressing to Zamora, I was like, man, like I get frustrated with her because we have to talk about these things and she's so sensitive because I hurt her feelings all the time. And he's like, bro, do you want to be married to a woman or do you want to be married to a man? And so I found that my problem was that I was having trouble understanding the woman characteristics.
Yeah.
And so when he broke it down like that, it was very understandable that that's a lot of times the solution is that there's that conflict coming from the fact that we're wired differently.
It's been great, and I'm glad that even though you didn't pick 2015 that we talked about it, because I do.
Well, because
I'm very happily married, and it's good. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. We have questions that we're itching to ask you too. So
that's fine. Now that I'm warmed up, I might as well. So I'll and I might give you a straight answer. I might not.
That's all right.
I'll just forewarn you.
That's fair.
Okay.
Is this real? Like 1960?
1960. So just in case you picked that. So I was born in 1970. Okay. And 1960 was really a transitional decade that I'm familiar with by sort of being born in the post.
Come on, man. That's not a part of testimony. You weren't even alive, bro. He's straight giving us a history lesson.
In the heat of the sexual revolution.
So like Jimi Hendrix. Okay, I won't talk about it, but I just put it in there. I was gonna put 1492 in there, right? At 1492, there's a lot of misinformation going on about Christopher Columbus. He's not some kind of genocidal maniac. If you're going to try to give reparations, who are you going to give the land to? The Latinos came over here as Spaniards on a conquest. Yeah. Are you going to give it to the Apaches? Or are you going to give it to the Cherokee? Because the Apaches conquested the Cherokees.
Well, not to mention that the Aztecs were cutting hearts out of people. So
yeah. So I was going to throw that one in there too. This guy's so funny. He busted me on that.
This is a good year.
1990. Okay, so
that when you were born, bro?
The 90s, and that's probably where some of your questions might be stemming from. So
okay, here we go.
Yeah, 90s. That was the.
So we're gonna do the decade.
Yeah.
Heck yeah, the whole decade. Now we're talking.
Well, I only remember probably like 45 minutes of it.
Oh gosh.
It was like that. Yeah. No, just wild. Touring around as a skateboarder, like you mentioned at the front end.
Oh.
That was the decade. I think I turned pro in 1992, right around the time I was like quasi baptized.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
How old were you?
22.
Okay.
Yeah,
22, you became pro.
Yeah, and I had a decision to make. There was a fork in the road there, and for me at that time, I thought, wrongly so, that church was boring. You know, those people were nice enough, but wow, I can do all this. And so I did that. And honestly, I wish I would have just kind of stuck around Calvary Chapel, San Jose, and done that. But what's done is done. And
why? It wasn't a good experience for you to be a pro skateboarder? It wasn't.
Well, it depends. See, so you have to distinguish between the act of skateboarding and then just like the lifestyle you can get caught up in. You know, so as far as like skateboarding goes, it's pretty cool. I mean, it's just as fun as like BMX or surfing or skimboarding or something. And to be able to have support doing it or any of those things is an undeserved blessing. There's woes to it, but the blessings, far outweigh those woes. You know, you're dealing with weird people, weird promoters, especially like in the foreign countries, and just get hit in the shins all the time. You know, doing some demo, like for some the demos, I don't know what people were thinking. So you would do this demo like in Arizona in July, demo, and on the flyer it says demo starts at 1 p.m.
in the heat of the day.
Yeah. So you're buzzing out there. You're on heat stroke. You're in a van with 8 or 10 dudes just eating Jack in the Box. So whatever. It is what it is. Fun kind of thing. But yeah, there's booze everywhere. There's carousing. There's immorality. There's harder drugs. And so yeah, I got sucked into that. So skateboarding itself was not bad. Being involved even in the entertainment business to some extent was not bad. I was just making a lot of really poor choices. And I didn't realize it until later. And so it caught up to me in 1999. I was like, oh, hey, wait. This little dream world that I'm living in is just ruining me.
What's an example of how it was just kind of eating at you?
Well, I don't know. Let's see. How much do I want to get into it? I started to notice it was kind of weird. Like, so I started doing these like sort of mini little socio-psychological experiments that I didn't even realize that that's what it was. I was noticing we were going from town to town, and people were really excited when we would get to town and want to let us know where the party was or hang out with us or be seen with us at the bar or whatever. And then after a while, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stay in this town. I'm going to stay in this town like indefinitely. So I would just, wherever the party was, I would just stay at the house. And then I noticed a day or two after, people are looking at me like, okay, it's your time to go, right? Like, we don't want you around here. Right?
I can't believe you stayed. That's bold. That's just bold.
Right, so I've tried to stay in town, and it never really lasted more than a day because I noticed people be hungover the next day. They're wanting to go work their jobs and get back to their real life if they had one. Some were unemployed, skater crazies or whatever. And so I started to realize, I was like, these people don't really like me.
Man, you're bringing out some really good points here, bro.
Yeah.
That I'm dying. Yeah. That's why the celebrity culture is such a facade.
Yeah.
Because I feel bad for actors and celebrities, and when they make these PSAs that we're supposed to care what they think. I feel bad because they're under the impression that the mass audience cares, and I feel bad because the public treats them really like clowns, and that's not how God sees these celebrities, obviously, but that's how people treat them. And then I feel bad even more for those who believe it, who believe like they're more than just a mere person or part of that public mass. Well,
that's a shift from the art culture. So Michelangelo didn't sign the Sistine Chapel, right? It wasn't about the artist, except for the fact that he was so, huge that people contemporary to him knew Michelangelo was commissioned to do that job. But beyond that, it was about the art, and that art, even though I'm not affiliated or I'm actually critical of the Catholic Church. They were the sort of holders of the art for years, right? Yeah. And so it was about that art, and it was about that chapel. It wasn't necessarily about Michelangelo. Nowadays, a guy that comes to mind, even though he's in the pugilistic arts, Logan Paul. He's huge everywhere.
Oh, the YouTube guy?
Yeah. So he's got 3.5, 4, 5 million followers or more.
Right.
Good entertainment boxer. He's got this trilogy kind of going on with this guy KSI from the UK. They sold out Staples Center.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's not good fighting.
It's all right. They put on a decent show, 6 3-minute rounds. Anyway, that's another discussion. But it doesn't matter because people aren't following the fighting. They're following Logan Paul.
They're following that person that they love to watch.
Yeah. And so it's that shallow. Now, nothing against Logan Paul. He's probably he's a friend of a friend. Okay. The guy that my nemesis, Jason Ellis, who I don't know if I'll ever get around to trying to fight again. He's friends with him.
Why do you call him your nemesis? What's that? What's going on there?
They're just rivals on the internet.
Yeah, we had a boxing match and he TKO'd me in the second round, but that's a whole different. Anyway,
that's not a nemesis. That's a bully.
No, I got in the ring. I got in the ring with him. Anyway,
I'm just kidding. You're not being bullied.
So that's where the arts are now. Is young people, or I guess young people of all ages that are into this. They're following that person's feed. And it's about that person. So it's no longer, and that's really disconnected. That's the self-centeredness of postmodern art. And so in the pre-modernist period, they weren't even signing it. The art was about God or about something other than the artist. And so, now it's just become this sort of personality cult.
Yeah.
And subsequently, youth suicide rates are up 76%. Because they're not reflecting. They're not looking at even a Picasso, even a postmodern thing. They're not looking at a portrait or an artwork of a sunset or even the sunset itself and reflecting and getting blessed, like Psalm 19, like David is doing there. The heavens declare the glory of God. They're not having that artistic type of aesthetic experience. Yeah. And so it's leaving them found wanting. It's just this self-centered sort of...
Yeah, because the media that they're consuming, semiotics, that's the word I was looking for earlier, which is the study of signs and signaling and people, how they interpret, how they read signs. You see the red stop sign, you signal that as a stop. And so the media or the art culture that they're consuming is self-centered, and so they are going to in turn also be self-centered and not find something bigger than themselves when they look at the art, because all the art out there, all the media, say for instance like YouTube, it's about that personality, and so they are in turn going to reflect that as well, and find that they're not as popular as that personality that they're trying to emulate, and that's what kind of really paints a very dark picture in their own life. Yeah. Even with any person, and we talk about this on one of our previous podcasts about how the culture is in it, how social media has really created this impersonal kind of secretly covetous type of lifestyle and attitude towards life and each other, and you gotta be careful with that social media stuff, man.
Yeah. If you were to pull out 2003, I was doing a college study for Mike McClure after he had taken over for Don McClure at Calvary Chapel San Jose. And it grew. There were 9 of us. It grew. Some nights we would have 30, 40, maybe even like 50 people on special events and stuff like that. Too much ministry too soon. So I stepped out, right? That's when I tapped out. And I just made sort of a false mental note that I'll go kind of get sorted out. And then I'll just pop back into some ministry like that, right?
Yeah.
Those opportunities, especially for a guy like myself, I don't come from a ministry family. I'm not like super connected by nature into any church movement. Mm-hmm. So this is the opportunity when Pastor Dave said, yeah, I have something for you, which was in 2019, 17 years later. So I just have to keep reminding myself that these opportunities, they don't come around every day.
How common do you think it is of people dropping out of ministry?
I just see the statistics. Like there's a lot of pastors are only lasting about 3 years, and they're not retiring as pastors. So I don't have the exact statistic in my head, but I know the drop-off rate is pretty high. So with every call, there's a commitment, because if you get emotional about your call, and your call is based on how you feel, you're not going to feel good at some point.
When the discomfort comes, right?
Yeah. So, I'm not saying that ministry is not an emotional thing, but I'm glad I'm almost 50 years old because in the church where I am, I just took over a pre-existing church. And I think there was just not a hesitation, but a skepticism like that I was just going to come in, establish this Moses model, and then just be like, do this. And I'm not like that, So I, maybe when I was younger, in a bad self-centered way, but even now, because I think people can kind of lead like that and be effective, but I want to see people get established in ministry.
Yeah.
I already had a guy sort of lead communion for me. There's another guy, he's an elder at our church. He's going to lead communion, and just raising people up for those times where, if I can't speak, I don't want to have to call somebody in from out of town. I'd rather have somebody local do it. So there's some guys, God's kind of raising up some guys. And then we got gals that have been serving there faithfully for years. One of them, her name's Teddy. She just really helped me out. We were in a predicament. We had to move the church from the building we were at to my house. Like 20 or so chairs and the keyboard and everything, and set it up in my living room because the Lytle Creek, the board of directors there in the community center, not of the church, they're like, now we got to shut down the building. So there's no public meetings there at that building. So we had to move everything. And this gal really stepped up and stood in the gap, And,
wow. That's so awesome because in 1 Thessalonians, Paul, if we understand what happened there in Acts chapter 17, he tried to share he shared the gospel there, only had a few weeks with them, much shorter time period that he did in other areas as opposed to Ephesus for 2 years, right? And then he gets ran out of town essentially, and then he writes to them because of Timothy's report, and I think around chapter 2 he says, "You guys are my crown." That's like going back to what you're saying, and then kind of what you're reflecting on there as people who God uses in ministry. It is so important to understand that ministry, the calling and the commitment, really is not about us. It's about that crown. He rejoiced in the fact that despite the much affliction, that some of them were dying because of the gospel, which is why he had to make sure to to reemphasize the soon coming return of the Lord. That they could be encouraged by that, even though some of them were dying. But he thought of them as his crown, his reward, as his riches. In other words, the fact that God is working in the lives of these people through him, through that ministry, through the presentation of the gospel, that those are things that we should be much you in your Bible study, you in your church, and in what we got going on up there. The fact that God is working in people's lives, that should just be a constant thrill.
Yeah. Because
of God is actively working in the lives of people, and we get to be a part of that.
Yeah, amen. Yeah. And I'm excited because I had that opportunity at Calvary San Jose in 2003, and there's lasting fruit. I wasn't even really there for a year. We just had this sort of college outreach study, and a guy, Josh Villatoro, he's still leading worship at another church. Mike Ashita, I'm pretty sure he's doing like youth ministry at Calvary Chapel Fremont. Daniel Thomas, It's Mike's like brother-in-law or cousin. He's planted a church. There's 3 or 4 or 5, maybe even 6 people, Tosh Woods, serving at Calvary Chapel Mountain View. I can rattle off that list of names of people that are still in ministry. And then I basically did sort of evangelism, studies in seminary, and sort of itinerant teaching. But it's really kind of anonymous, or this sort of flow through thing. And I can't really mention any names until now. Now I'm working with these people that hopefully will go on to either continue in ministry in Lytle Creek or go plant a church somewhere, or if they move, get into ministry somewhere. So I'm really excited. That's 17 years of not really having that opportunity. So I'm really thankful. It's like a drought kind of.
Yeah, that's what encourages me, bro. And so with that, we want to conclude this episode. I just want to share with you guys real quick to remind you why it's important to like and subscribe and to share. There's, as Simon said earlier, the internet is this vast abyss of just content and information and media out there. But who knows who may be watching this? Who knows would be encouraged by the different, just Simon's journey throughout the years, as he just said, 17 years between the first time he attempted to step into ministry, and then all that has happened in between then and now. To me, that's encouraging. To me, I asked Simon what if his life was a sermon point, what would the main point be? And he said God's faithfulness. And obviously, I think through this interview, we can see God's faithfulness. And so what that means to you as you watch this is that if God could be faithful to Simon, that God could be faithful to you. And that's very encouraging. That's a equipping to not only knowing that God can use you, despite our knuckleheadedness at times. I mean, I know I'm one, but literally you can walk away from this interview knowing that, hey, God is faithful to you, and I think that's encouragement enough.